is not pumping. BTC and majors are currently dropping in price since
Donald Trump is the new president! And crypto's back, baby!
Bro, the markets have actually been so shit. I'm losing so much money. I literally didn't, bro. Just so you guys get perspective,
Look at that chart, but something weird happens when you flip that chart on its side. Does it look familiar? What about now?
Both spent untold hours performing speeches that people were required to attend.
The same man who once sold university degrees and overpriced steaks has now entered the world of crypto grifting. And surprise, his base is once again learning the hard way that anything Trump-branded usually benefits one family and one family only. And because one failed Trump coin isn't enough, Melania apparently decided to get in on the action, launching her own cryptocurrency. Because nothing screams sound financial decision like investing in a digital token from a woman whose last major business venture was selling NFTs of her own eyes. Unfortunately for those who bought in, Melania's coin is looking like an even bigger flop, proving that when it comes to spinning their supporters, the entire Trump family operates like a well-oiled casino. They always win, and you always lose. At this point, you have to wonder, how many times can the MAGA base fall for the same old Trump hustle? They bought the hats, the NFTs, the gold-plated Bibles, and now the disappearing digital coins. What's next? Trump-branded financial coaching? MAGA mutual funds? A God Emperor Trump pyramid scheme where you recruit two friends and climb the ranks? Here's the brutal truth. Trump isn't building wealth for America. He's building it for himself. And his supporters? They're just the ATM machines, endlessly withdrawing their savings and handing it over, hoping that this time, this investment will be the one that finally pays off.
Guys were told through his entire campaign that he was going to be doing blanket tariffs. We screamed from the rooftops that it is an absolutely horrific thing to do to the economy and that we were going to experience a massive inflation as a result. And when we experience massive inflation, or the threats of tariffs are looming over us and then coming back and then looming over us, it really does create a lack of consumer confidence. The economy starts to tank, your stocks start to tank, your Bitcoin is sitting dangerously low. People are like, whoa, what's going on? Like, you weren't told? Like, did you really not think he was gonna go through with the blanket tariffs? And now you're suffering the consequences. Even a commenter under your video, this was the first comment. He was like, damn, my portfolio was much better under Sleepy Joe. Bring him back. But enjoy everything you voted for.
Look at that chart, but something weird happens when you flip that chart on its side. Does it look familiar? What about now? You cannot tell me that this is a coincidence. 80% of the supply of this coin is held by insiders and creators, so they do have the ability to move the price like crazy. And this is scarily accurate. What do you guys think?
Trump has just made another huge crypto move at the crypto summit. He has officially announced that America will never sell their Bitcoin. And he has ordered the government to find ways to acquire BTC without costing the taxpayers a dime. But the market is not having it. The crypto summit is live, yet the market is not pumping. BTC and majors are currently dropping in price since the crypto summit has started. You may be wondering why, and it's because traders are finally catching on that Trump has been playing the market. People are not reacting the way he expects anymore. We're currently in a weird spot where manipulation is at play and smart money knows it. Best move right now is to stay informed, don't FOMO, and watch how this all unfolds. Is this bullish long term, or is it just more political games? Let me know what you think in the comments.
Donald Trump can seem to be an anomaly in current history. His rise, his consolidation of power, his corruption, and his erratic theatrical style seem to have few direct parallels. However, if we go a bit further back in time, there is an historical figure with so many overlapping characteristics that it can provide us a solid grounding. Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, later known as Emperor Nero of Rome. Nero was the family favorite, selected by his mother, or in Trump's case his father, over his brother as the desired successor to the family empire, even though, like Trump, his brother had the more direct claim on the throne. Once his succession was achieved and his brother pushed out, Nero, and Trump, was handed the reins of the empire as a very young man. We can think of the beginning of Nero's reign as Trump's first term in office, where he was surrounded by surrogates and advisors, those who wanted to maintain the stability of the empire and who felt that the young, impulsive emperor wasn't ready to accept the mantle of power. Nero, like Trump, seemed much more caught up in displaying the trappings of wealth and prestige and in entertaining himself and his entourage than engaging in actual governance. During this time, his advisors were able to curb some of his worst impulses, and for the most part, stability prevailed. But they warned of his susceptibility to flattery and corruption and worried about his erratic behavior and vengefulness. As time passed, Nero and Trump began to chafe at being blocked from total power. They began to systematically eliminate or exile everyone who challenged them, no matter whether formerly trusted professional, friend, or even family member. Their suspicion of others reached such heights that both of them eliminated anyone who might be presented as a successor. Soon, the only people left around them were sycophants and enablers, and their full nature began to reveal itself. Nero, like Trump, spent large amounts of time and public money by traveling to sporting events, both of them choosing to compete in rigged competitions so they could garner medals and awards, including, for Nero, winning a gold medal at the Olympics in chariot racing, even though he was thrown from his chariot. He was awarded the gold because if he had finished, he would have won. Trump has also awarded himself trophies, even for events in which he didn't compete, like this 2018 golf championship. Both spent untold hours performing speeches that people were required to attend and required to applaud. Both fancied themselves artistic geniuses and planned lavish parties and entertainments that were financed through public money, which caused much anger and resentment. For Nero, everything came to a head about halfway through the second phase of his reign, in 64 CE, when a devastating fire destroyed 70% of Rome over the course of 9 days. Rumors began to circulate that Nero had been too busy giving performances to even attend to the devastation, and the citizens of Rome began to agitate that he might have set the fire himself. Nero responded by accusing Christians of setting the fire, who were then an obscure sect representing less than 1% of the population. Because Christians were distrusted and made some people uncomfortable due to their different rituals and refusal to take part in state-sponsored religious rites, they proved to be an effective scapegoat. Christians were rounded up, shackled, and purged from Rome, something current Christian nationalists still hold on to in 2025 CE, 1,961 years later, as evidence of state persecution. This mirrors Trump's persecution of trans people, immigrants, and minorities as scapegoats for his policies, which are beginning to signal the possibility of a massive economic meltdown. After the fire, Nero's power began to falter, but the cracks really began to widen when he decided to commandeer devastated city blocks to develop a grand palace for himself on the ashes of his citizens' homes and businesses, similar to Trump's policies for Gaza. He named the monument to his own grandeur the Domus Aurea, or Golden House, and it had every possible luxury. Gilded walls, over 50 different dining rooms, mechanical ceilings that dropped cascades of flower petals, and a 100-foot-tall bronze statue of a nude Nero posing as the sun god. And all of it was financed with rapidly dwindling public monies. When he entered the Golden House for the first time after construction was finished, Nero said, "At last I can begin to live like a human being." And here are some interior photos of Mar-a-Lago, for which we taxpayers also foot large bills. Nero even began to agitate to rename Rome Neropolis after himself, but 8 years into the literal dumpster fire, with Rome's economy collapsing and the provinces sustaining multiple rebellions, with senators being jailed or eliminated based on false charges, all dissent suppressed, and the public enraged, the empire had had enough. The military and the Senate turned on Nero and declared him an enemy of the people. He fled Rome and staged an elaborate self-unaliving, with his last words recorded as, "Ah, what an artist is passing out of this world." This is how, when checks and balances are removed, an unstable, grievance-fueled, self-aggrandizing ruler will inevitably falter. Due to his paranoia and arrogance, Nero did not leave any successor, nor has Trump. In the case of Rome, the power vacuum inspired jostling among the military, the Senate, governors, and the general population. Those who had benefited from Nero's excesses, including the citizens who enjoyed his grand displays, were upset by his ouster and even founded cults that worshipped Nero and claimed he had faked his own death and would return. After a year of civil strife in which Rome had 4 emperors, a stable victory was won by Vespasian, a military general and senator who enacted fiscal reforms to stop the economic collapse and instigate large infrastructure improvements, including bulldozing Nero's Golden House and turning it into a public space, the Colosseum. Rome came back from the brink. What can we learn from Nero? His downfall was a spectacular mess. He spent so much time indulging himself and eliminating potential threats that when the tide finally turned, there was no stable leadership left to take over. The Trump parallel here is almost too on the nose. Like Nero, he spent years hollowing out institutions, surrounding himself with sycophants, and purging anyone who could be a competent successor or a check on his power. If he falls, whether through legal troubles or even just age, there's no clear heir. The MAGA movement is built entirely around him, not a party or ideology with longevity. If and when Trump is removed from the picture, we could easily see a modern version of that Roman power vacuum, different factions of the right vying for control, each claiming to be the true inheritor of his movement. We already see this with figures like Ron DeSantis, who tried to be Trump without the chaos, but failed, because MAGA isn't about governance. It's about spectacle, personal loyalty, and grievance. It's the same reason Nero's death didn't lead to a smooth transition, but to absolute disorder. If Trump physically leaves the scene through illness, exile, or by some other means, we could see MAGA fracturing into warring factions, Trumpism becoming even more cult-like in his absence, and possibly Trump resurrection conspiracies like QAnon-adjacent myths about his return, similar to Nero's imposters. I wouldn't be surprised if people started treating AI deepfakes of him as real messages from beyond the grave in those cases. This may mean that MAGA, given its marriage of convenience between functionally opposed groups, might fizzle in Trump's absence. Authoritarian movements collapse without full-blown civil aggression. 1. The leader falls, but the movement is divided. In some cases, authoritarian movements fracture when the leader is removed, as in Franco's Spain. After Franco died, his regime slowly transitioned toward democracy because there wasn't a single unifying successor. 2. The state outlasts the movement. Sometimes these movements escalate toward violence, but the state suppresses them before they can gain power, as in the Weimar Republic versus the Kapp Putsch in 1920. This was an early far-right coup attempt in Germany that was shut down not by military force, but by a general strike. The people refused to cooperate, and the putsch collapsed. If U.S. institutions hold firm, we might see this outcome. 3. The grievance can lose its power. If an authoritarian movement's core grievance is addressed, its emotional energy can dissipate, as in Napoleon's exile and the Bourbon Restoration. After Napoleon was removed twice, his movement didn't spark a massive revolt because France was exhausted from war and his successor gave just enough concessions. Overall, history shows that it is possible to come back from dark times, even from...
In recent months, President Donald Trump has undertaken a series of actions that have raised alarms about a potential drift toward authoritarianism. These developments have sparked intense debate among scholars, political analysts, and the public regarding the future trajectory of American democracy. One notable move was President Trump's appointment of himself as the new chair of the Kennedy Center, the nation's premier performing arts institution, replacing 13 board members with his allies. Critics argue that this action mirrors tactics used by authoritarian regimes to control cultural narratives and suppress dissenting voices. Further consolidating executive power, Trump dismissed 2 Democratic commissioners from the Federal Trade Commission, FTC. These positions are traditionally insulated from direct presidential control to ensure unbiased oversight. Legal experts warn that such actions could undermine the independence of regulatory bodies, leading to weakened consumer protections and a shift toward partisan enforcement of regulations. The president's pursuit of retribution against perceived adversaries has also intensified. Actions such as firing officials, revoking security clearances, and initiating lawsuits against media outlets have been interpreted as efforts to silence criticism and erode checks on presidential power. This pattern of behavior is characteristic of leaders who prioritize personal loyalty over institutional integrity, raising concerns about the erosion of democratic norms. Trump's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act, an 18th-century law to deport individuals without due process, despite court orders to the contrary, represents a direct challenge to the judiciary's role as a check on executive power. Legal scholars argue that such actions threaten the foundational principle of the rule of law and set a dangerous precedent for executive overreach. Collectively, these actions contribute to a narrative of democratic backsliding. The undermining of independent institutions, retaliation against opponents, and disregard for judicial authority are tactics commonly associated with authoritarian regimes. Observers caution that if left unchecked, these trends could lead to a significant erosion of democratic governance in the United States. As we reflect on these developments, it is crucial to consider the implications for the future of American democracy. How can citizens and institutions effectively respond to safeguard democratic principles in the face of such challenges? Engage with us in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth analyses of pressing issues.